Obviously, every camp that the Rangers are involved in, the biggest story is pitching, and particularly starting pitching. I think that every year we go to spring training thinking, are the Rangers going to have a guy who can go 200 innings? Or are they going to have multiple guys that can go 200 innings? When you look back at this team's history, the teams that won had workhorse pitchers. They've got two guys in Kevin Millwood and Vicente Padilla who could do that this year. And I think the most encouraging thing right now about Millwood is that he's made all his starts and he's made all his pitches. And while the results weren't great the last time out, he's healthy. He hasn't been healthy the last 2 years. He's had real slow springs, and I think that's impacted his start. The second part of it is that you've got three young guys, and you'd like to see one of those guys really step up and be kind of a workhorse. And I think that they've been very impressed with what they've seen from Matt Harrison, Scott Feldman, and Brandon McCarthy. McCarthy was just outstanding the other day, and Michael Young having a little fun with the old camera. Brandon McCarthy was just outstanding the other day, throwing sliders that he has not thrown in the past, and his velocity was good. Had a lot of first pitch strikes. It was a very impressive outing.
What has anybody stood out so far for you that you weren't expecting?
Well, for me, Brandon McCarthy is always going to be a key guy until he really establishes himself. So I think that he's a guy that you're really kind of looking closely at. I don't know if you would say you're expecting him to stand out or not, but it's a guy that you're examining, and he's been impressive. The other guy that I wrote about yesterday or on Friday was Warner Madrigal, who I think is with a little bit of weight loss and having kind of attached himself to Frank Francisco, who had attached himself to Eddie Guardado last year. I think this is a guy who's growing very quickly into the kind of guy who could be a very effective setup guy, and maybe an apprentice even into someday as a closer. He's aggressive, he's working quickly, and he's much more athletic right now.
Give us a name of someone who Ranger fans should be taking a really good look at right now, that they may not be recognizing right now, but they need to learn the name now.
Evan Grant. That's insidecorner.dmagazine.com. No, the guy that they may not know who could have an impact. I don't know that there's anybody in camp right now who could have an impact this year that people aren't aware of. I think that for a lot of people, the intriguing things are going to be this year as the season gets started, to follow the exploits of the next wave of stars. Martin Perez is at the top of that list among minor league pitchers. I think that it's time that Engel Beltre is really going to assert himself as a force offensively. May see him at Frisco before the end of the year. And the guy that I think that's way down on the totem pole in terms of where he'll start the year, but I think he's going to be a guy who moves pretty quickly, is a right-handed pitcher named Joe Weiland, who the club took last year in the draft. Nolan Ryan really likes this guy, really kind of attached himself as a mentor to him. And when I talked with him last year, he seemed like a very, very bright kid who has an idea of how to pitch. So in terms of guys who are going to come out of nowhere to have an impact on this team, I think this roster is pretty much set. But I do think that there are a lot of minor leaguers that people ought to start getting associated with.